Are you ready to join me in transforming fear to freedom? That's the objective of the show. Are you ready to explore with me and my guests? Are you ready to get into the deep and play? This is where it's at, and that's what it's all about. No medical advice here. Use discernment and decide for yourself if the information is right for you. All views and opinions expressed on this show belong to the individual and are not necessarily shared with the producer of the show. Want more details? Go to letsgetrealchattingwithcatherine.com. Now let's get real and have some fun. Who are we going to explore with today? Come on with me and let's get into the deep. Welcome back to another episode of Let's Get Real Chatting with Catherine, and this particular segment I'm calling Go Deep or Go Home. And I wanted to have this little video chat with Debbi, Coleen, who's a frequent guest on Let's Get Real Chatting with Catherine, and we've created a kind of, it evolved into this Go Deep or Go Home aspect because whenever Debbi and I get talking, she is so intuitive and she has input from her guides, and she's so knowledgeable about the starseed blueprint, which is something she created based on the Chinese five element theory. And then she has her astrology and her numerology and all these gifts that she brings together in this beautiful synchronistic kind of web that as we talk, we go deeper into the layers and looking at all the little sparkly aspects of life on this planet. So it always goes deep. So I wanted to introduce this as a separate kind of segment, which is different than just a exploration that I do with a lot of guests into what they're doing, the books they've written, or the things they're doing to inspire others. This is a little bit more like philosophy, a little bit more like just exploring into some of the aspects of our lives. So thank you once again, Debbi, for joining me. I'm just really delighted to be having this chat with you today. There's so much going on.
That's for sure. It's exciting times, yes. Well, interesting times, as they say in the Chinese proverb.
Yes, it is interesting. And that's a very good way to look at life when we've talked about this before, but just bringing it up again, the concept of being neutral. Whenever you can have that, oh, this is interesting, you take away the energy of it being, negative or positive or whatever. It is interesting. And much of what's going on today, I find, is that interesting.
Yeah.
So
it's just so much more restful when we can be at that place, it seems, where interesting is where we are, where we move back and view life from our higher perspective, from the witness point of view. And then also, this is the marvelous thing about this time, this new epoch on Earth, is that we are able to be simultaneously in our high self and in our biological self and our egoic self, everything all at once. So when we get all that lined up so that the ego is supporting the soul, as I've heard it described, we can have quite a different experience than I think has been available to us really for a long time.
Mm-hmm. It does seem like there's a lot more opportunity for understanding. Like we don't see, perhaps I'm speaking for myself, but it does look like a lot of people are starting to see, we're not accepting everything as concrete. We're saying, okay, and we are kind of taking that, well, that's interesting. How about if I look at it this way? Is there another way? Is there another angle? Is there another layer? Is there, instead of just accepting, the way life happens. And I know we're going to talk more about karma in a live show very soon, but I wanted to talk a little bit about it today because there's still a lot of people who talk about karma. They'll curse somebody. They'll say, well, you know what, karma, hey, whatever you do is going to come back and bite you in the rear end. And you know, you said something, I think it was the other day, about karma being something that is kind of man-made, something we created our in our ego mind to what, as a control mechanism, or what would you?
It has everything to do with what we choose to magnetize to ourselves with our thoughts and our opinions. So if we get hung up on something, if we're not able to pass through it, if we're not able to learn from that experience, to step back, to be free, to be disentangled from emotion and judgment, we have created karma. So since that emotion, and well, it's not the emotion, it's the judgment. It's the belief that we create about something's negative or positive aspects that locks us into karma. So if we have an experience with someone, for instance, and between us we create a sense of inequality or debt or misunderstanding, then yeah, that becomes our karma. We got to work that out, because it's not freedom. It's not supporting either being in that in the outcome. So that's how it's man-made. Not only do we create the karma, but it's our belief and our focusing on a certain part of it and our stuckness in a certain part. And really it comes down to our judgments.
Yes.
Good or bad. This is good, that's bad. That's what creates our karma, because in the whole scheme of things, we are not good or bad. Behaviors can be negative or positive, but we cannot be good or bad because we're created perfect. And we lose track of that. We've lost the understanding of that, and we tend to, well, that's the duality. We move into the duality, and we find something to blame, shame, guilt, resent, all of those, all that stuff.
Yeah, and that's the whole thing about judgment. A lot of people think about judgment and they think it only means judging something bad. But every time you're judging something, you are judging it. You every time you say, I'm giving it basically my, it's either good or it's bad. And behavior, I think, when we discern behavior that we find appropriate, good socialization skills, manners, and consideration and appreciation and all those things, we discern what we prefer. But that's not the same as judgment. Judgment is more of it's absolute, because sometimes
it's an absolute.
Yeah, and it seems, and that's where I think we run into trouble, is because we can take that to, we turn things into absolutes that aren't absolutes, because an experience that if I judge it to be good, I may prefer that experience, but someone else may not. So, so it's about learning, language for one thing, how to express things in a way that we actually are more empowered than. I find judgment very disempowering, because we're projecting onto the world and other people these little cages, it's kind of like, that's what to me judgment is. It's a box that you put stuff in, and boxes don't work that well.
No, and we're always expanding, so we're always being pushed out of boxes by the very nature of the universe. Expansion won't let us stay in these little man-made cages. We're always having to go beyond. And once we've discovered all the different aspects of a situation or an experience, there's more, because we become more complex. Life is always becoming more complex, and then we simplify it by learning about it, by expanding with it and into it. But I think that it might be good to kind of talk about something a little more concrete, about, starting from the personal always works. And, I had an experience this morning that something came up and I just was instantly infuriated because I have this, my reality, no, not my reality, but within my reality, which is my story, I have wounds about being imprisoned. And for whatever reason, for being held back. Freedom. Freedom is and to have somebody say, you can't do such and such, you can't tell, or you can't, it's like, push my button harder, won't you? So I went instantly into anger. And from that place of anger, I had to look at, well, what is it about this? What am I going to do about this? Because, there's always that understanding, what am I going to do about it? There was lots of parameters around it. And I do have this little, rule of thumb. Look at the behavior. What's the behavior? And for me, if I don't like something, how do I change? How do I stop that? Well, that's not always the best thing to do, but talking about it, being, talking about the behavior, about what I don't like. But then from that place, from the instant anger, moving back to what do I do about it? There's another layer. And then stepping back even further from that is like, recognizing my buttons. Oh yeah, Debbie, you always get, you get angry. That's your set point. Then I went online and I looked at the internet, that knowing about the triangle, the drama triangle. I was looking at Lynn Forrest's website, and she talked about how she uses the triangle of victim, the rescuer, and
perpetrator.
The bully. But oh gosh, there's a different
perpetrator.
I'm sorry,
perpetrator.
Yeah. Persecutor.
Persecutor.
That's
okay.
The word. So in that triangle, she made the point that we mostly end up in the place of victim, because that's a set point. That's kind of how we see ourselves in relationship to the universe in our current mass consciousness way. But how fluidly we can move from one role to the other. But how we also have a set point of a favorite. And, I love to be the rescuer, but I can be a persecutor so easily. I can be the victim anytime. And so this morning when my buttons were pushed, I felt like a victim. I moved into persecutor, into rescuing myself, rescuing the other people involved. It's just important to see that triangle that we step in, because when we're in it, again, we're not free. We're not in the most expansive reality that we can be in.
Well, it's closed, right? And a triangle is just like a box. It's closed, and you there's no way. But it's interesting when you said that. I thought this would be my perception, but when I think of those three roles, victim seems like the one that is the most wildly, like, I would feel like we stay in that one more often, because being the hero is, well, we got to pull something up, we've got to step into that. Like, if I'm going to do something heroic, and it's easy to champion someone else's, issue or kind of thing. Persecutor, well, we don't prefer to be that. Occasionally, of course, we will be that, but generally that's sort of a thing we really don't want to be that persecutor, because that's we've already decided that's kind of bad. And being the hero is good, and being the victim is pathetic. I mean, we don't want to be the victim, and yet there is something good in it. There is a there's a positive in that. So it's a funny thing, and I get that triangle that we go around it. So every so often we come out of being victims and become heroes for something, and also even in being the hero, sometimes we'll become a persecutor in our anger, you know. So,
well, in a place wherever we think, oh, I got to teach that person a lesson, I got, that's a persecutor, because what's lesson to be taught here? This is just a dance, a 3-person dance, or a 3 parts of ourselves dance, because really it all comes down to a person's own reality. We may be dancing simultaneously with other people, but it's our dance as we go through the roles.
Wow. I just had this flashback, and I don't know if it's from this reality or not, but it's something I read, and I must have been on social media, but it was like, it was something exactly like that. It said somebody did something, and they were rallying people to make sure that this person got caught and paid for their crime. Like there was a whole series of things they wanted out of this. They wanted people to rally behind. Yes. One, they judged the behavior and the person, not just the behavior, but the person was bad, vile. We have to catch them, and we have to make them pay. What an interesting lot of energy we put into something like that. I can't remember what happened. But it was just kind of, wow, that's a whole...
It goes on all around us.
Yeah.
It's all the time. We have wars, war. That's our set point. We're warriors. We're coming out of the age of the warrior. So, of course, we have that. A warrior has to have a victim, and there has to be a persecutor, because they need to be a hero, And so we're always trying to be the hero in our world. So we set things up so that there's a victim, there's a persecutor, and there's a rescuer. And we dance around that, taking turns with each other to play that game. And I think that it would be a mistake to call any of those positions wrong, or that whole dance wrong, because then again, we're getting into more judgment.
Yeah. No,
so
it's not about... It's interesting
curious.
to see. Yeah, it's interesting to see, though, the different roles we do play, in our human condition, and then when you see them, you can choose something else. Because when you said, somebody hit your button and you became angry. So to me, whenever anger comes up, it's there's some fear. There's usually fear behind anger. So my question, when your anger came up, then I'm thinking, so what was the fear behind that? What was the right? And you said need. Freedom. You were.
And that's what the need is. Oftentimes, is to be safe, to have something stop, to make to make a position clear, to be understood. Those are all positions that can come up, anything really. But in that particular situation, you're absolutely right. What was the need? What was my need under the anger? Wasn't that the anger was wrong?
No.
The anger expressed need, yes.
Right. And that's important for us to know, that not to, because we have been, really taught that anger is bad, and it's not. I mean, it's...
Well, especially with...
Yeah, and to have ways to express it, and like you said, then you went through the whole thing. Well, what did you need to do then to release the anger? And for you, that was take some action, have a discussion, think about it, consider it. But I think it's important for us to see that, because there's other ways that people would have a situation like you had, where the anger comes up and it's just vile. I mean, it feels awful in your body, and instead of expressing it or doing anything, we push it down. And, that's...
And else we throw another person, or, or have a discussion with another person and be angry about a third something, so that we can express it. And the power of the anger is very lost then, because anger is like pain. It's to get us out of something. Pain, we put our hand on a hot stove. It means take your hand off the hot stove. This is dangerous. Anger shows us something is wrong in our reality. Something for us is not right. And
interesting.
I'm not that everybody would have that reaction, but to me it was very not right, because for me, when my freedom is threatened, which means I have fear of being controlled. I want to be the one in control.
Well,
so,
I think
it's just ourselves, but we don't have to stop there and analyze and analyze. It's really good to know these things about ourselves, but as we get to know ourselves better, we move into that place where we can step back from it and look, okay, how will I deal with this situation where I'm not creating anybody as a victim, anybody as the persecutor, or anybody as the rescuer? How do I speak my truth without, and it's very hard because our language is full of very loaded and weighted words that trigger, and everyone's going to be triggered because we all have our own unique triggers. But when we go
that's
into
so
that,
true, isn't it?
Yes.
Like they're
Did
individual.
I need to say
a person can say a word, and another person has an image of that word, which may be really neutral to some people, but not to others.
I love that classic story about the three old friends who had known each other in university in New York and went on their lives, moved away, but had a little reunion, the three of them, and they're in New York, and they get on a bus. And they ask, because they're not exactly sure how to get to where they're going, where they want to go, one of them asked the bus driver to let them know when they get to such and such a street. And the bus driver was quite rude to them. And each of the three women afterward, when they were discussing them, they had a very different reaction. One woman was very affronted. How you're being rude to me. And the second one was very, I've stepped out of my bounds here. This is terrible. And the third one went, oh, this is New York. Rude bus drivers. This is so. And that's the truth. And we assume that people have the same reaction as us, but that's just not true. All of us have unique reactions.
That's good.
And beyond that, so we assume that there's a right reaction. So we develop our standards of political correctness, and it gets a little tiresome, It makes our world very small. And then we have these fears, so we set up these contracts with each other. Oh, you can't say that to me. Oh, you can't, and some of the contracts are very important because, when people are damaged by, especially physical reactions, you can't hit me. Well, yeah, that's quite a violation. But when we get into, kind of these subtle contracts where we rarely put them into words, but someone, gets that hurt look in their eyes when you say something about them, or say something to them, they're hurt. And then your job or my job is to protect them from their hurt by never saying that again. And it limits our freedom. It limits the truth. So that's just another whole area where we need to be very aware of the subtle contracts that we're writing with the people in our lives. And you get it on Facebook all the time because you're not seeing people's eyes as you talk to them. And but it's still, people are reactive.
Yeah.
And
and we're not very... Well, it's just, sometimes we're not very conscious of our choices of words and what we say. I mean, I know myself, I'm very quick. I type very fast and I think very fast, and I read something and then I'm on to the next thing, and because I'm busy and I'm going like crazy. And, I find that sometimes it happens that you don't really think about I mean, it's not designed for that. Some of social media, I mean, look at Twitter, you only got, 140 characters, so you're not saying much. Actually do think it's interesting. I do think more concisely when I'm posting something on Twitter than I do on Facebook, where I can go on and on and on. So I do choose my words. Yeah, that's interesting, because I do choose my words very carefully. But I feel like, I read something recently about now the energy shifts and the changes and the stuff like that. And then what's coming for 2014. And, I don't know, it feels like maybe this is the right time to sort of bring it up as well. Because, 2013 was the year of the feminine, new feminine energy coming in and stronger and powerful, which kind of explains why we're no longer very tolerant of inappropriate behavior. Not so much, I think some people, a lot of people, myself included, I've started to see where judgment doesn't work. It's not working for me. But discernment is very, very strong and powerful. So I'm choosing what I like, what I don't like. I'm choosing what I want in my world, what I don't want in my world. I'm sifting through physically in my home, in my, wardrobe, in every aspect, like layer upon layer. I'm doing that. And we're in December of 2013. So I'm thinking, it feels like we're getting ready for 2014. We'll have some really interesting dynamics that we've let go of a lot of us have, of patterns. And, what I was reading last night was saying how the collective is really going to be waking up to the new higher vibration dimension that the earth is moving to. She's moving, whether we want to or not. So in order for us to, right?
Well, we and she are
we're
part
one.
of the same energy, so...
Right, but it kind of sounded like it might be a little bit of a rocky road in 2014, but on the other hand, it could not be. It could be with ease and grace. And I'm kind of wondering what because, karma, I remember talking about karma.
What's available to us is way more. Yeah. What's going to be available to us is way more of our higher self. That self that is connected to who we really are, the perfection, the wholeness. We step down who we are so much coming here. We're kind of even shattered by the experience of coming to this world that is difficult. It is difficult for us to express ourselves into this physical realm. One, because we're not physical beings, and two, maybe 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 as well, because there's a lot of negativity here, and a lot of it has been dissolved, but it's still pretty much an issue for us to understand that we're living in a world of so much negativity, and so much of that negativity is judgment, and judgment on the very basic issue is our sense of separation from each other. Mm-hmm. The way that we have divided ourselves up into and been shattered and identifying with certain aspects and not with others. So that identification with smaller pieces, like what emotions are right to have, not just express, but to have. Yeah. What thoughts are right to have, what understandings, what way to walk. Those things make us very small, and we have a lot of them. Mm-hmm. Ritual and expectation, the different parameters of culture are terribly limiting. Mm-hmm. Very, very, very tiny for us to fit into. And we can tell because when we come across another culture, oftentimes we're rather taken aback by something different, small often, but different. Mm-hmm. in the way people are in another culture. And that lets us know right away that we're talking about boxes. Mm-hmm. We're talking about little territories that because they're different in different cultures, we'll have a reaction to them. Mm-hmm. It's just the thought of men wearing dresses. There's a big territory made very small. Okay. Women can wear pants.
Well, it took us a while, though. It didn't happen overnight.
Oh, no kidding. No kidding. And that's another thing about this judgment, is that it's very current. It changes with our mood. It swings with the times. That, fashion and political correctness are always maneuvering us into different attitudes, and they say politics makes strange bedfellows. Well, we're always changing our dance partners when we're in judgment. And I like what you said about discernment. I think that that's a really good point, is discernment, and to talk a little about discernment, about what it really is. It's when we have those judgments, okay, we look at them and we can say, is this really true? Because we're going to have judgments. It's how we're made. The human mind is set up to winnow out experience and to follow pre-laid roots of thought and expectation. It keeps us safe when we have huge amounts of data coming at us all the time. So we have to recognize we're going to have judgment. But how quickly can we get to the place of, is that the truth? Is that the only possibility? How is it that what that other person did or said or thought or created is right or wrong? What's my basic judgment here, and yet where can I go with that? We have to recognize we're going to go through that process. Faster or slower, it doesn't matter. We're going to go through it to get to a discerning point of view of, okay, well, this is my point of view on it. This is what I see is happening. And the bigger the context of our discernment, the more ably we are able to interact with each other in a in a non-violent way. I'd use that word, non-violent.
And also,
but even beyond that, sorry, you go ahead, Catherine.
Well, I was just thinking that I think a lot of us are starting to figure out is that we have a lot more choices than we thought, and by having that realization, and I guess it feels like to me is when you can let go of believing there is only one right way, one wrong way for everything in life. When you become more fluid, because I remember years ago, being fluid was called being wishy-washy. Being fluid was like, that person doesn't know. I mean, we even had posters about it. If you don't know where you stand or something, you'll fall for anything. So in other words, make your mind up when you're young, know what you want, know who you are, know what you value, and stick to that, and you'll be all right. Well, in my case, for sure, I recognize what I thought when I was 9, when I thought when I was 15, when I thought when I was 20, 30, it's not the same as what I think now. It's not. And it doesn't mean I'm wishy-washy. It means I've expanded. And it means I have a bigger point of view. And I'm able, I think in some ways maybe I always had, but I certainly wasn't able to always express it. And whereas now I feel that freedom to actually express. Like you said, freedom's important to me too. And I think it is to a lot of people. And I think as we see some of the third dimensional structures sort of closing the cage on us, we've been feeling that for the last, maybe 20, 30 years. We've really been feeling more of that box, more messages from media. If you don't look just like this, you gotta, you're an outcast. Well, we're not, a lot of us are just not going there. And I'm thinking that 2014, I keep seeing this image of like a breakthrough, like 2014, glass ceilings shattered everywhere for everybody, like unlimited, like truly it happened. We actually will walk into that. I don't know. It just feels like that to me, walking into a new paradigm if we want to.
Yes.
Which, of course, is another part of discernment. We can choose.
Well, and that's the thing is we can choose how we are with things. And the more that we recognize how everyone has a different reality and that everyone's reality is based on some coherence within that person. There's reasons for how they are. And as we feel empowered to be safe in our world by our own actions and our own interaction with the law of attraction, for one thing, as we recognize that no one has power over us except if we choose. I mean, really getting that, not just as a nice thing to say, but the truth of how that works. As we create our own reality, we can have a lot more openness to many more possibilities. And we can recognize that we're all here to explore a different part of reality. When we stop thinking we're all here to be matched pieces in a game of checkers or something, we're really limited. Who wants to be a red or a black checker? So when we get to the point that at least we can be the different pieces in a chess game, and even beyond that, no game at all, perhaps, just having an openness to what wants to happen through divinity into this world, that we're all part of a oneness that's here to explore the entirety, and we can't each of us do it separately. We've come here in many bodies and many minds to explore reality, each in our own individual way. That's the miracle of what is going on here.
You know, I have this visual, sorry, Debbi, I have this visual when you said that, all the chess pieces just running off the board, moving any way they want to, just out into the totally. No, you don't have to have two steps over and one out back and all the rest. Everybody goes their own way and everybody was equal. Wow. I just have this huge visual of all of them becoming animated and just jumping off the board. Oh my gosh, you mean I can go to the kitchen? I can go in the woods? I can do anything. I can travel.
Oh, I'm going to go play Clue then. Is that it?
Whatever, right?
Yes, exactly. But we have to be self-aware, and that this is how we do it. When you, like you say, you move from judgment to discernment, and then from that place of discernment, we can choose from a very much widened number of choices, and we can understand people. I mean, isn't that maturity, being able to understand people in their myriad differences, and to and we're very lucky here in Canada. I mean, we live in a country that embraces multiculturalism. However poorly or well we do that, no comment. But the fact that we have an ethic in our very government to do that is such a gift, because in that way we can widen choices immensely. I mean, just the choices in food is amazing.
I know. I think that's one of the things, like my sense about Canada and multiculturalism, I think we have done a pretty good job of evolving to the point where we're not just tolerating each other, we're embracing. I mean, there are women, Canadian women who, from European backgrounds, who love saris. I mean, there's a dress that I love them. I love the materials and the way they look on them, very feminine. I love that. Someday I'm going to have one, because I think it's just they're so comfortable and so awesome. I mean, when I taught preschool, I had a lot of women, moms that came in to help, on their day. And they were from these various communities that wore the saris. And one day, because it looked so complicated, I thought, how in the heck would you ever get dressed? So because we crossed that barrier, and she was in my class and I was teaching her children, we had a relationship that I could actually say to her, so what's the deal? How does that work? How do you do it? Do you make your own? Blah, blah, blah. And she explained it. She, showed me how it was. And I was just like, oh my gosh, it's so comfortable looking and awesome. Yeah. So to me, that's where we cross that barrier.
We do. And that's exactly how we learn to look at, if we have two choices, if we have, a trouser suit and a sari, we can go on to 3, 4, 5, and 10 choices so much more easily.
Right.
And that's where we start, we talk about multiculturalism and omni understanding. I like that. Then there's a place and I think this is the place that's really important. This is the layer that is the most important. This is the most freeing layer. And that is when we go beyond the place of saying, okay, well, that's my button. That's who I am. I'm reacting. How do I respond in a non-reactive way? When we get to the layer is, how did I create this? That's when we're really accessing the truth about our world. So when I can stop and look at my experience this morning and go, wow, that's interesting. What's the symbolic meaning of that?
Yeah.
When did I create that? 10 years ago, 5 years ago, yesterday, maybe tomorrow? Who knows how magic time is? Mm-hmm. So what came, and here you and I are having this conversation about something that has led into this discussion, and how perfect, how timely. Mm-hmm. How did I create that whole thing and attract it to myself to express a certain learning? And that's where we get to the real crux of who we are, the spiritual self, that nothing here is by chance. It's all meant to be. It doesn't mean that it's lockstep, predestined, or anything, not at all. But everything has a symbolic meaning that is attracted, well, by my judgment, or by my the karma that judgment has created, or my readiness, or it's my teacher. There's so many ways to describe it, but it is the truth.
But when you
what goes on here.
But when you have an experience, show up, and then so it just shows up, and you're by yourself, and that's it shows up. But when you have an experience that shows up, and then you are able to share it with someone else, or there, as you say, there's no accidents, it's synchronistic, things happen, like that happened today. We happen to be planning on having a chat today. So all of it it's so, when you look at it like that, you can see and that you created it so you would actually be able to share it. Because like you say, we're all connected, we're all one. And I think that each one of us has our own piece of the puzzle, which, we mostly talk about. But so when something happens that it's a teachable moment or a shareable thing or a situation, I think that's so cool to recognize, because a lot of times I've heard, people will poo-poo the idea that, oh, there's not meaning in everything. Have you heard people say that? Something happens, you always try to find the hidden meaning in everything, or you're always looking for a double meaning or another. And you know what? It's because it's true. There is. And part of that is the idea that we're not just this physical body. And really to understand, I mean, I did just listen to Mary Morrissey last night, and it reconfirmed certain things that I have also known, and that's the fact that that what happens in the physical is actually the last step. So if the symbolic or whatever, that's, energetic level, something's going on, and if we don't deal with it when it comes up there, then eventually it does manifest in our physical body.
Right. The concreteness of that, what we're, repressing, avoiding, projecting. Yeah, it shows up. And yes, showing up in our physical body or by something that happens to us. And it's not in a negative way. I have been through that in my life of going, some of those, those nasty things about another, learning experience, fill in the blank. And it's really when we get to the point that it's not one of those negatives, that we start to work with it in a positive way, recognizing that, oh, okay, this is meant to be good, not taking it as we've done something wrong, I got to figure it all out. We're just participating in a dance, and the point of view that we take on it, oh, I'm really willing for this to show up for me. And then we can also set some parameters in, because we have that power too. I'm really, and I talked to you about this earlier today, having this idea of how to change my reality, how to change it. And awareness and all those layers we've talked about, that works. But how do I really change my current life, my future, and change the past too? How to really move into that in a powerful way. And I've worked with the idea of making vision boards for many years now. I love that whole cut and paste the pictures and the words to describe what I want. Wow. But I'm starting to learn through, some, you send me the most amazing connections and videos to watch and things to read, and I get so much out of it.
I'm a good researcher, Debbi.
Recently. Yes, the researcher. And the whole idea of our reality being a series of now moments, like a million of them in a second. And we've chosen them through our reaction, our thoughts, our beliefs, our expectations, our judgments, opinions. And we've been creating them all along, because that's what our mind does. It creates these incredible snapshots of what we believe in, what we expect, what we can see in our reality, what shows up for us, and our reaction to it. And what I've imagined is I have this life that is this series, like a slideshow, of images of things and events and experiences that, what if I throw out the ones I don't like, and I have this vision of me tossing out, little snapshots out of my slideshow, and inviting in, with the help of my higher self, ones that are really useful to me, plus looking at my to-do list and my future plans and my wildest dreams and imaginings, and replacing those and just filling them in at a million a second, and continuing to do that all the time by choice, but also with willingness to be guided by what wants to happen through me. Because that's the next layer, is recognizing that below or above or all around, it's all around, it contextualizes us. Everywhere around what I believe and what I'm creating is something that's already fully created, completely created, and is full of wisdom that I can tap into in any moment, and is also dynamically, eternally interacting with me, taking my every projection and belief and experience and turning it into greater freedom and openness for me all the time, personally, individually, and in the macrocosm as well.
Yeah, everything we do affects everyone else, and that's why there's a couple of things I want to share that came to me in this last, time, a couple of weeks, I think. But one of them was the sense of debt. And I relate this because I was meditating the other night, and I had this sense of, as I'm meditating, bringing in the crystalline energy from the divine matrix above, and bringing up the energy from Mother Earth, that, the crystalline core of creation, and being this conduit and letting this energy just flowing through me. And as I'm laying there, and mind is kind of going empty, and I'm feeling this sort of happening, and I'm thinking, wow, it's like God is breathing me God is breathing me. Like, I don't have any control over any of this stuff. God is breathing me, or the universe, or whatever you want to call it. But this energy is actually breathing me. I mean, I'm not making my blood pump. I'm not, I'm not sitting there saying pump, pump. It's just happening. It's just flowing through me. Excuse me. And so then I had this, really this understanding of, individuality, my uniqueness as, my unique personality that God or the universe uses to experience itself with my specific personality. But I also was getting this whole sense of how on earth could we ever have debt to anyone when we are all being breathed by the same source? I mean, we can express that in different ways, different religions, different color skin, different genetics, different habits, whatever. All those things. That's, God expressing itself each of us as a little cell, as Dr. Bruce Lipton talks about, the imaginal cells. But then it's just the sense of debt that we have countries in debt, people in debt, all this stuff, debt. Well, it would be like the bird being in debt to the worm, and the worm in debt to the... So, if we looked at that from that karmic kind of stuff we've all bought into, so the little worm is going to get eaten by the bird. So it must be karmic because he's getting eaten by the bird. And so, or that means... Well, all the worms from now on are going to say those birds are really bad and they owe us because they ate our brothers and sisters. They did this to them. They destroyed them. But we do that. And it is silly when you think about it like that. And people could say, oh, that's way too simplified. But truth is, how can I ever be in debt to self? Like,
yes.
So our belief in this, I mean, I know there's an energy exchange. I give out, I have to receive. And I was talking to this woman about Julia Maria Lloyd about money, and she had a really great saying. She said, "How you do money is how you do life," and I thought that was a pretty powerful statement. And that when I think about, okay, if we don't actually owe each other, and we all are this expression, then it makes so much more sense that when I use the gifts that are being breathed through me and expressed through me, and making your experience of your gifts and whatever, that experience I'm sharing, then it makes sense for you to reciprocate with an exchange of another, and it has to be, in order for that exchange to be balanced, it has to be something I want. And because we don't exchange, like everybody doesn't have everything, that's why we use money. So it really became so clear to me how we can just let go of that whole concept of debt. And it can't be debt. There can't be debt because we're all one being. But at the same time, I can see how it can be out of balance, and when it's out of balance, then we end up with dis-ease and stuff in the body. So what's am I on the right path there, Debbie, with the...
Yes, I know from my learnings in Unity, they're very clear in Unity that debt is lack of forgiveness. In fact, I remember studying the 4T program, which is a tape-recorded program, this wonderful man who's not in a body anymore, named Stretton Smith, and his beautiful, powerful voice on these tapes talking about how he was he'd been studying truth principles for so long, and he was at this later point in his life trying to buy a house, and realizing that problems came up with the mortgage. And when he went into himself, he realized that he had a past history with the mortgage company that he was still holding a grudge about something that had happened much earlier in his life. went in and did, forgiveness work around it, and magically the whole problem with the mortgage disappeared. It's analogies like this that really empower us and make these kind of abstract ideas really work, and that's my understanding is, remembering his voice talking so powerfully
well, and forgiveness
about how he changed himself by letting go of something he didn't even realize was holding him back, and his whole outer world shifted because of that. Imperfect, and for me, it's not that experience of him getting his house or his mortgage that was important. It was him having that experience so he could put it on the tape so I could learn from it.
Exactly. Just like you having the angry moment this morning, which brought you to the position to be able to share today. It's so synchronistic. And that's what I get. Like, even where we are shifting, we are being supported, we are moving into a more harmonious kind of potential, if we so choose. And I see that as what's happening. Like 2014, it's funny how, I don't know the numerology, Debbi, of that, but I know how numbers look to me. That's how I am. I'm very visual. So 2013, I could see the feminine in that. 2014 feels, I guess maybe because they're even numbers, I'm not sure, but it feels like it's the balancing. It's like we're coming back to, like, 2013 felt like, okay, bringing in that round feminine energy, really flowy. And now 2014, it's like, boom, nice, solid landing. I don't know if that's how it is, but that's how the number looks to me.
Well, whatever relationship we have with the symbolism that's around us is our truth. So when you have a strong feeling about it, it doesn't matter about the rules of numerology or not. It's your feeling into that future experience of 2014 that creates so much of, or allows you to interpret or get a taste of what will happen. And I can see that. Actually, 2014, that's a 7. So, the year is a pretty big number for all of us. It really is the big out there mass consciousness, or consciousness of where we're at picture.
Right.
So when we're talking about personal, it's also good to connect that in with your numbers, which is your birthday and your birth month. Added up to that in a numerology, uses, I think it's called subtractive adding or whatever. It's a strange term.
Well, if I add those numbers up, I end up with a 9.
Digits together.
Sorry.
So for you, that would be 2.
Oh.
That would be a 2 plus this 7, which means a 9 year for you. After your birthday.
Right.
Up until your birthday, you're still working on the 8, which is a very, very feminine number, a number with a lot of roundness and completion. It's it's success in many ways.
Yeah.
But when you move into a 9 year, which is after your birthday, a lot of things start leaving your life. A lot of things start to shift and change as you get ready to go into another cycle, because 9 is the final number of this 1 to 9 numerological cycle. So people going into a 9 year will experience people coming and going out of their life, changes in many ways, and it can be kind of a discombobulating, but also sometimes highly satisfactory experience, depending how you decide to go into it.
Depends on how attached you are to it too. And I think, I don't know, we've covered a lot of territory here, but one thing I was gonna we always do that. Do we go deep or do we go deep? I mean, that's really what it comes down to. I mean, there's nothing superficial here. But here's the thing. If people are watching this video and wanted to have a reading with you, can you do that for them? Like, take into consideration the numerology, the in the tools that are available now that people like you, Debbi, have, it's not like the old fortune teller that just, said this was going to happen and person went, oh, I'm doomed. What's happened, I think, with the gifts that have been revealed are, these are potentials. If you keep doing X, Y, Z, your compass is headed for, the big D or whatever it might be. Yeah, that's just a number. That's just a letter. It doesn't mean anything. But if you are,
well, I've started to do a lot of transformational work as I do readings by looking at what's current in a person's life and where they're at and what, especially with the tarot cards, what wants to be seen, and then turning more cards to see what could be until we find a positive. And so we get a whole path, usually a journey from where the person is to where they could be in a much more positive light. And sometimes that's 2 cards and sometimes that's 5 cards. It really doesn't matter. But with each card that gets turned up, there's usually another gift or something that person didn't realize. Or in the moment, a message can come through to both of us about what that card means in relationship to where they're at or where their next step is. And by the time we get to that final destination where we're both happy with the card that shows up, then there has been a beautiful transformation of understanding, which I think people can take away and very quickly put in. They seem to, in this time, I've seen people make some pretty quick shifts in their lives into something new.
Yeah, it's just a matter of having that little bit of a tool, a little bit of an insight. It's like, when you walk out of the bathroom with toilet paper stuck on the back of your dress and you're walking along and you think everything is cool and somebody else says, hey, did you know your dress is stuck in your pants and you got toilet paper hanging out? That's kind of what, right?
Now this could be a little too close to home, Catherine.
Well, I saw this happen one night at a dance. We were at a dance and the band was on the stage and the light was on the bathrooms for some reason. Well, it wasn't on the bathroom, but when the bathroom door opened, of course, the light from inside poured out and this woman came out and you could tell she had primped and she had her lipstick on and she was just kind of strutting it. And the toilet paper was stuck on her shoe and her skirt was stuck into her pantyhose and she's walking out and somebody ran up and told her. But it was hilarious in the sense that it's hilarious in the sense it wasn't me, I guess, but also that I mean, maybe, I don't know, I may have,
but for the grace of God go I.
Yeah, except that what I see is that's exactly the same ideas when we're walking out strutting our stuff in life and we don't know about something that's stuck on us. And that's where you kind of can help to say, hey, did you know
behind us that we can't really see? Yeah.
You're seeing things and you use so many tools and, sorry, I didn't mean to make it about bathroom humor, but it just happened that way. You never know where my mind's going to go.
We'll be checking behind us now.
Yeah, well, there you go. So,
well, I think, too, that often just by having a certain card come up and it meaning something for me, it opens a door for the wisdom that the person brings into the room with them to come forth. And that can come from them. It can come from me. It can come through us. It can come through the cards themselves. So there's so many different routes. I can't tell you how many different kinds of inspiration have come when I'm doing readings. That It's always different.
Well,
I always learn. I always learn.
I know. And a lot of times when we are having a conversation, you will, we'll be just talking like this, generalities, and then you will say, well, actually, your guides are here right now, or you'll start to say something and then you'll kind of stop yourself and go, and this is coming straight from your guides. So it's like there's it's funny, and when that happens. So, but I was just thinking, since we're in this conversation and coming to the end, Do you have anybody there right now that wants to give us a little bit of wisdom before we go? Or I'm not trying to put you on the spot, but sometimes it happens. And
no, it's okay. Everything for a reason, right? Everything for a reason. And that is the message. Everything is for a reason. And what is happening to us in 2014 is more experiences that teach us to trust that everything is unfolding in its right and perfect way. And that everything that we go through, there's going to be situations that come up for people that can look fairly frightening from the front face of it. Because what happens to us when we start to really, really get free from our lives is we walk through our most difficult fears that we have been successful in avoiding the rest of our life. You know, that's what we do, is we avoid the fears and how they look. And so what the message is here is that what is truly going on is we're being taken lovingly and gently by the hand and led through the things that have been the most frightful looking for us into the light of something quite different. And this will result very quickly in a transformational shift in people's level of trust in themselves and in the process of life, which is what needs to happen. Because to go back to where this whole problem comes from, if we go back to bullying and rescuing and persecuting, is us doing it to ourselves. Is it's never done just to the outer. It's always begins in our heart when we're in relationship to ourselves. We persecute, we victimize, and we rescue unnecessarily. Rescuing has a positive connotation, but the truth about rescuing that needs to be stated is that it's when we get an egoic satisfaction from another person's plight, thinking we're better than, stronger than, greater than, and using that energy to victimize, to persecute. So we do that to ourselves. We do it to ourselves first.
And I think that I get what you're saying there, but there's also the other situations where there truly someone does need a hero in the sense of like a small child or a situation, you know, a house is on fire and you need, you know,
yes.
There are times.
Exactly. That's quite different.
But, you know, when those
that
things.
We're to help each other too.
Yeah. But to help each other, but in the sense I feel like the reason when you see someone who has done something who seemingly heroic, usually with an extreme sense of strength or able to overcome something, they've all had some divine inspiration to do it. And usually when someone will say to call them a hero, their response is, I'm not a hero. I did what any other person would have done in my situation. They always deny that. And I think that's why. Because that truly is a natural state of being spirit in human. It's, you know, like we are here to help each other. And so when that happens, it's not our ego. Because if it was the ego, when you call them a hero, they'd be going, oh, I'm a hero. You know, I'm getting out their cape. So that's a really good indicator.
It's true.
Yeah, I was just thinking for myself in my own life, that's a good compass. If I feel like I need to save someone from something, I'm actually disempowering them. If in their normal course of their lives, you know, it doesn't require me to intervene, then to do so, I'm actually standing between them and God, which is ridiculous because they have the same access as I have. But if there's a situation that calls for some kind of heroism, spirit will guide me. I don't have to think about being a hero.
Right. It's the energy that comes through us in those heroic moments. And that can happen with the smallest thing.
Sure.
The person that you see on the street and you give them a big wide smile.
Yes.
You know, somebody drops their wallet and you pick it up with those things are such simple acts of heroism.
Mm-hmm. And they're natural. They're natural. They come to us naturally. No effort.
They do. And that's the truth of our sacred gifts, is they come through us, not in response to the egoic mind or the ego, which is tends to berate us and harass us, and because the ego's only way to keep us safe is through fear. It doesn't have access to the heroic aspects of us. It only has fear. And when we give the ego that job of keeping us safe in places where we're lacking trust in our connection to divinity, then our ego has only that capacity to use fear and blame and all the agents of fear.
Yeah. Well, I think I think this has been really, as always, an awesome, a deep, delicious chat, and I'm.
Well, I think sometimes we may put our listeners a little bit at a loss because we're so used to speaking together. We have shortcuts in our own personal conversation, and we can range because we have done so much talking together. So I hope that when people listen to us, they can just relax into it and allow that what they need to understand or what wants to come to them is just there, and not to make it a struggle. I know that you and I have a really powerful set of shortcuts when we talk.
That's true, but you know what? I also want to say that I encourage people to, if you're feeling like, okay, I got something, but I didn't understand it all, go back and listen again. Nobody's watching you. It doesn't matter. You can do it at your own leisure. Well, it's important because, what people might not realize is that you and I and every other person who's on this planet is still constantly expanding. We are learning every day. So we have this conversation now, and when I was creating a new little video, a fun video, just sort of highlighting my guests and what's happened on the show. And when I looked at some of the clips, I mean, it's refreshing. It's something new. I'm looking at it through different eyes. So every minute, like you say, we're changing. Yeah. So you may not actually get everything today, but it's still here.
There's always that possibility too that if someone has a question, they can contact us. Mm-hmm. Why not? We're on Facebook, and sometimes things need clarifying. That's the absolute truth, because we're talking across the void of our different experiences, and it helps to fill in gaps when someone asks that question of like, what the heck were you talking about there?
And you know what? I think I agree. And not only that, it will help us. It will take us deeper too. It always does. There's no stupid questions. They're always part of that expansion. And just like Debbi's anger this morning, it's always a catalyst for something more. But I also want to let people know, Debbi does a live show with me a couple times a month usually, and they're always posted on the website, letsgetrealchattingwithcatherine.com. Go to show. It says show on the top navigation bar, and it has a list of all the shows that we've done. You can listen to the replays and the links to the YouTube videos, but also it shows what's coming. So you can mark your calendar, and we open the lines. And I think sometimes people don't they listen on the phone, but they don't want to ask their question because they're afraid that it's whatever their reasons are. But I just want to encourage you.
They just don't want to interrupt the flow of our inspiration.
And there's always that too. But the thing is, if you have a question, there's the email box too, which doesn't, there will be no interruption, because if you're there and you have a question, you're part of it. There's a good chance that we are already connecting at a certain level. And so I invite people to do that.
Yes.
Yeah, absolutely.
Indeed.
So thank you very much, Debbi, Coleen, for joining me on Let's Get Real, Chatting with Catherine. Go deep or go home. And I look forward to our next chat.
Thanks, Catherine. It's always fun.
It is that. All right. And for the rest of you, Until next time, take care. Wasn't that amazing? Thank you to my guests for sharing with us today. Thank you for watching. Feel free to share the link. You can join us for live shows by going to letsgetrealchattingwithcatherine.com and listen to the replays from the show page, preview guests, and explore links to our Facebook fan page, WordPress blog, and more. We are creating an exquisite world. Until next time, take care.